So the sequel to The Sun and the Star was just announced, and we seem to have a few clues regarding the events of the next Nico D'Angelo adventure. The book is titled The Court of the Dead, and today we wanted to go over everything we know about the book for sure, as well as touch on some of the theories and speculation, beginning with the confirmation that Hazel will have a much more prominent role in this book. The last time we saw Hazel was in the Tower of Nero, where she and Frank were helming the reconstruction effort of Camp Jupiter after the triumvirate attack. She and Frank seem to have quickly grown into two of the most effective praetors that New Rome has ever seen, launching a brand new recruitment effort to expand the forces of New Rome, and the life seems to be going well for her. This is particularly important because it plays into the logline summary of the Court of the Dead, which is that Camp Jupiter has become a safe haven not just for demigods, but for monsters as well. According to the official summary, various monsters across the Greek and Roman pantheons have not just literally reformed, but have spiritually reformed as well, now learning that they don't have to be evil. Based on the cover art for Court of the Dead, we can also presume that the Minotaur will have a substantial role to play, and will likely fit into this logline as a reformed monster. We know that he once led a battalion of Kronos' forces into the Battle of Manhattan and was defeated by Percy yet again during the last Olympia, so he might seek to change his ways and put his energy towards helping demigods rather than slaughtering them. The summary suggests that Hazel will reach out to Nico and Will to help manage not just the overpopulation of monsters that are flocking to New Rome, but that they will all begin systematically disappearing at the hand of some mysterious force. As of now, we don't have any major leads regarding what this mysterious force might be, but there are a few different ideas. First, let's take a look at the project title itself, which might reference the panel of judges that oversee the Judgment Pavilion in the Underworld. In the cover art, we can see a trio of silhouettes overlooking the chained Minotaur, and this might be the titular court in question. When a soul goes into the Greek underworld, they are judged by a panel of three historical figures, including Thomas Jefferson, King Minos, and William Shakespeare, but these are not the only three judges that can preside over the case. The way it seems to work is that there's a rotating panel of judges that switches out regularly. So if we are to see the Judgment Pavilion and get an up-close look at what afterlife judgment might look like, it's possible we might see three of any number of possible historical figures. This could range from royalty that presided over Greek city-states thousands of years ago, to more Roman emperors, to more modern historical figures that are known to be demigods. Each of the three of them has to be a distinct silhouette, and specifically, the one in the middle seems to be wearing a dress. We know that George Washington, Harriet Tubman, and Harry Houdini are all demigods, as are many additional historical icons, so there's no limit to who these three might be. We know that Nico has a dark personal history with King Minos in particular, since he tried to manipulate Nico into completely resurrecting him all the way back in the Battle of the Labyrinth. Eventually, Nico was able to see through his lies, but it might be interesting to see a reunion between the two now that Nico has grown and matured. We also know that the Judgment Pavilion has been pretty unexplored despite the number of times that we've seen the Underworld, so the cover might be the arena where the judges preside over a case. Percy, Nico, and Talia went through the fields of punishment during the Sword of Hades. Percy bathed in the Styx. We've been inside Hades' palace several times, but we've never actually seen a soul face judgment before, which would be a nice addition to Hades' domain. It also explains why Hazel is specifically reaching out to Nico, since they're both children of the Underworld, so this would be their primary skill set, though it seems like only a portion of the book will actually take place in the Underworld. We learned in The Sun and the Star that Will, as a son of Apollo, struggles in an underground space, and routinely needs to be in sunlight to rejuvenate himself. Get him his vitamin D! This is what made his trek through Tartarus particularly difficult, since children of Apollo are simply not cut out for dark places like the Underworld or Tartarus. So rehashing this detail would be redundant if the entire Court of the Dead book takes place underground. Hopefully we get a more in-depth look at the current state of Camp Jupiter, including a cameo from Frank and some other Camp Jupiter regulars, though by this point, Reyna has joined the Hunters and likely won't be around. The rest of the video is going to lean much more heavily into the speculation side of things, of what we can deduce, so let's talk about some potential villains the project might showcase. If monsters are disappearing, then one of two things is most likely taking place. The first of which is that the antagonist is likely to be someone who doesn't believe that monsters deserve a shot at redemption. Nico and his team might literally be facing the court as they try to claim the souls of monsters, but there's another idea that we personally enjoy. If we're looking for the identity of whatever mysterious force is causing monsters to disappear, then the court doesn't seem like they have a particular interest in seeing monsters die, at least not so far. The court doesn't get jurisdiction over monster souls, and eventually they all end up reforming in Tartarus anyway. So we don't see why the court would suddenly care about monsters who are seeking redemption. They haven't stopped monsters from reforming before, so they need some sort of new motivation to justify the sudden change of heart. We certainly believe that the court will be playing a substantial antagonistic force, but we're not sure if they'll be the ones making the monsters disappear. They just don't seem like they have the motivation to do so, unless there's a detail that hasn't been revealed yet. If that's the case, then the likeliest candidate actually seems to be another demigod. In this universe, it's very common for the main antagonistic threat to be a god, titan, giant, or other mythological entity, but it's not as common for the villain to be another demigod. Even though Luke was the main opposition to Percy and Camp Half-Blood throughout the first series, he had an army of monsters that did most of his bidding, and eventually Kronos became the center of attention after he started piloting Luke's body. In the Heroes of Olympus series, it wasn't common to see demigods allying themselves with Gaia, and the crew of the Seven fought the giants. Then we get to the Trials of Apollo, where the Triumvirate were the immortalized Roman emperors who were essentially minor gods at this point. So seeing the villain be another half-blood would be an interesting change of pace, reminiscent of Luke's first turn to the dark side. The main series was so compelling because we understood Luke and what he wanted. We could see the darkest parts of Luke and Percy, and we always knew that anyone in camp could turn. Seeing campers ally themselves with the Kronos was much more heartbreaking than it was threatening, because we never felt like someone like Ethan Nakamura was a colossal powerhouse of sheer strength, but we hated to see how resentful he had gotten towards the gods because it humanized him. We didn't want Ethan or Luke to be defeated, we wanted to see them redeemed, and the Court of the Dead has the opportunity to introduce a villain that hits some of these same key points. It's possible that instead of a historic or mythological figure, that the Court of the Dead might have a completely custom antagonist, a demigod who had grown so resentful of the monsters that they've been fighting for years that this idea of redemption is an absolute insult to everything a demigod has lost. We know that adult demigods are rare, but they do exist and are becoming more common, so seeing an adult demigod who has lost everything across the years could be the perfect stepping stone for a compelling antagonist with much more humanity and nuance than someone like Gaia or Nero. When this demigod finds out that monsters are seeking redemption, they could be completely enraged. Why do monsters get to slaughter demigods indiscriminately and then go to those very same demigods for refuge and forgiveness? What place do these monsters have in Camp Jupiter, and why do they have the audacity to think that their crimes can be absolved? These are all incredibly compelling pieces that could be used to create an original character that has a much more moral and emotional depth than a lot of the Rorschach-verse antagonists, and might draw back on the olden days of someone like Luke. From a production standpoint, we know that Mark Oshiro is back and will be lending their voice to this new project. Oshiro's involvement was met with mixed reception for The Son and the Star, but there were key benefits and drawbacks to having a second hand. We know that there were a few key plot and lore details that fell through the cracks with Son of the Star, with a few gods and rivers being misnamed, and even a line calling Bianca Nico's mother, rather than his sister. But as a member of the LGBT community, Oshiro lent their voice to the relationship between Nico and Will in order to provide some first-hand insight. Since Rick himself has been very heavily involved with the Disney Plus series, it makes sense that he would need some help this time around as well. So with some tighter editing, we are confident that the Court of the Dead will be another worthy inclusion into the pantheon of Percy Jackson. Even though much of this video is speculation, we do know the basic plot outline and the key players of Court of the Dead. And right now it's shaping up to be an interesting adventure that seeks to reframe several monsters that we've seen in the past. Earning a redemption arc is always difficult, and it requires a few key factors to be done well. Since the Minotaur was featured prominently on the cover art, we will be using him as an example, though this could apply to a variety of other monsters that may appear going forward. The Minotaur does appear to be chained, so we're not sure if he will have a redemption arc per se, but it does seem like he will likely play a key role. So we'll be using him to demonstrate how difficult a compelling redemption arc would be. The first key factor that's essential to a redemption arc is genuine remorse and understanding of wrongdoing. We don't want to see the Minotaur be immediately accepted into New Rome's loving embrace, after he decorated his battle axe with the bead necklaces of fallen campers during the Battle of Manhattan. If he's going to be redeemed, he needs to put in the work. He needs to show sincere regret and be willing to put in the time toward making as many amends as possible. The next key that is often essential in a good redemption arc is a sincere and perpetual change in behavior regardless of thoughts and feelings of others. The Minotaur will still be hated and feared, rightfully so, but he must still continue to provide acts of service to others even if they're afraid. This is going to be a long and arduous journey if Rorschach and Oshiro really want to take the Minotaur and redeem him in the eyes of the audience, and it would take much longer than just a single book to get there. But perhaps this is just the beginning for him. Only time will tell if they can pull it off, and we for one can't wait to see. But that's everything we know so far about the Court of the Dead, as well as some of our own personal speculation. What do you guys think? Are you excited to see the Court of the Dead come to life, and what would you like to see from Nico and Will's next adventure? As always, we love this series, we love talking about the series, and we can't wait to see what you guys think about this new book. Stay safe, demigods, and we'll see you in the next one.